The next wide receiver on our list is absolutely my favorite. I do not want to be leaving a draft without him. I'll draft him multiple rounds earlier than ADP because guess what? He's that good of a value. What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
What's up, guys? I'm Scott Barrett of FantasyPoints.com, here to give you my 8 must-draft wide receivers based on Underdog Best Ball ADP. First up, we have Jaylen Waddle, priced as just the wide receiver 15. Things did not go according to plan last year. He finished as 21st in fantasy points per game, but keep in mind, he ranks second among all players in XFP per route run. What does that mean? It means that on a per route basis, he had the second best volume of any wide receiver in fantasy. Why didn't that translate so neatly into fantasy points? Well, he ran bad with touchdown luck, just 4 touchdowns despite 72 catches. But really, it wasn't that bad. 0.47 fantasy points per route run. That was the same as Keenan Allen. It was the same as Justin Jefferson. Really, it wasn't that he was running enough routes. And the reason for that is pretty simple. He just wasn't healthy. Take a look at his game logs last year. You'll see routinely capped at somewhere around 75% snap share. Games with 54, 45%, 61%. I don't think that's inherent to the Miami scheme or has anything to do with Mike McDaniel's coaching. I think he just ran really badly with injury luck. Weeks 1 and 2, he was dealing with an oblique injury, got knocked out of week 2 early with a concussion, sat out week 3. Weeks 4 and 5, Miami, I think, was being extra cautious with a limited route share. Week 8 was limited in practice all week. Week 9, missed time in that game with a knee injury. Week 16, missed time in that game with a high ankle sprain. So clearly super valuable player on a per route basis and just, didn't run as many routes as he should have due to injuries. But what happened in the 6 games he cleared a 70% route share? He averaged 14.4 fantasy points per game, would have ranked 8th best at the position. So clearly, I really like the value there. That wide receiver 15 ADP has great spike week upside, easily stacked with Tua Tagovailoa. Definitely one of the best values of the early round wide receivers. Next up, we have T. Higgins. Price is just the wide receiver 27 by ADP. And this really just makes no sense to me because I think you have to throw out the entirety of his 2023 season. Joe Burrow was an immobile shell of his former self throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, really limiting what the offense was capable of doing. They just had to get the ball out as quickly as possible. They had to live in shotgun. And so that really hampered T. Higgins' effectiveness. And you see that in his stat line, 32 targets, only 12 catches, not the typical T. Higgins. And then what happened? Higgins was dealing with rib injuries, hamstring injuries over the next 7 weeks, missed multiple time, was on the injury report for some of these games. And then by the time Higgins returned, Joe Burrow was on IR with a season-ending wrist injury. In other words, Higgins only played in 2 games where both he and Burrow were fully healthy. But in those 2 games, 7.5 targets, 89.5 yards per game. Those are easy wide receiver 1 numbers. So if we throw out 2023, we're left with 2021, 2022, an expectation of 1,000 plus yards, 6 or 7 touchdowns, 74 catches. Those are easy fringe wide receiver 1, mid-range wide receiver 2 levels of production. And yet he's priced as just a high-end wide receiver 3, just the wide receiver 27 on Underdog. Easy value, one of the safest picks you can make, but there's some upside there as well. The next wide receiver on our list is Amari Cooper. Price is the wide receiver 29. His 6 games with either Dorian Thompson-Robinson or PJ Walker last year were horrific. He averaged just 6.3 fantasy points per game, 63% catchable target rate, easily bottom 3 at the position. So if you throw out those games with backup caliber quarterbacks, Cooper averaged 17.1 fantasy points per game. That would have ranked 4th best among all wide receivers last year, and he's priced as just the wide receiver 29. With Deshaun Watson, 2.96 yards per route run, would have ranked 5th best among all wide receivers. With Flacco, 3.54, would have ranked 2nd best. With the other guys, 1.37, really bad. And so maybe you're saying, yeah, well, if only we had Joe Flacco. Unfortunately, we have, one of the highest priced quarterbacks in the league in Deshaun Watson. But even with Watson, Cooper was very productive. He averaged 14.8 fantasy points per game. That would have ranked just behind Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 6. And, Watson clearly wasn't playing his best ball last year. And so you have a guy priced as the wide receiver 29, as safe as they come, going back to 2016 and excluding games where Cooper failed to play at least 2 full quarters. He's beat that mark in 8 of 8 seasons. So as safe as they come, with, again, upside as well, would have been top 5 if you throw out DTR and PJ Walker. So great pick, Amari Cooper. Another wide receiver who feels just about as safe as they come, where you're getting maybe he doesn't break leagues this year, but you're getting a massive discount. And that's Keenan Allen. Even at this stage of his career, he's 32 years old. He's still easily one of the best separators in football and a proven target hog, a proven producer. According to ESPN's Open Score, Keenan Allen was the best separator in football last year, and there really wasn't even a close second. Clearly, the guy's still got it. You're drafting him right now as the wide receiver 33. Last year, he finished as the wide receiver 3. Not only that, but he's finished top 12 in fantasy points per game in each of his last 7 seasons. In other words, at his current price, he's 30 spots lower than where he finished last year, or 21 spots lower than he's finished in any season since 2017. You can see he's priced much more cheaply than DJ Moore, but I wouldn't be surprised if Keenan Allen outscores it. Keenan Allen is elite against zone coverage, while DJ Moore is elite against man coverage. Well, luckily for Keenan Allen is that the league continues each of the last 4 seasons to increase its rate of zone coverage all the way up to a 74% clip. That's a massive advantage for Keenan Allen. Even if he doesn't outscore DJ Moore, he is a much better value. The next wide receiver on our list is absolutely my favorite. I do not want to be leaving a draft without him. I'll draft him multiple rounds earlier than ADP because guess what? He's that good of a value. And that's Diontae Johnson. I'm probably not going to do this one justice. Read the article. It's a masterpiece. But the bottom line is Diontae in the Dave Canales Alpha X Mike Evans role. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm a big Dave Canales truther. I expect this offense to take a big step forward. But guess what? Even if it doesn't, he's still mispriced by multiple rounds. I've long believed that Diontae is one of the most underrated wide receivers in all of football. And you know who agrees with me? ESPN's Open Score. Sure, it hasn't translated as neatly into fantasy points, but he's had brutal quarterback play, horrible offensive play callers, ran really badly with touchdown luck, but the targets were always there. Why? Because targets are earned and they typically go to the best separator. And who's going to be earning targets for Carolina this year? It certainly isn't going to be Jonathan Mingo. It's going to be Diontae. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes the year top 5 in targets. Let's not forget what Adam Thielen did through the first 8 weeks of the season last year, ranked 7th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per game. And then the wheels fell off, like as they should for a 33-year-old wide receiver. I think Diontae easily has that upside. I think Bryce Young takes a step forward. I think Dave Canales unlocks a lot of potential for this offense. I think Diontae is super underrated. I think he's the best pick you can make at the position based on current ADP. Next wide receiver is Christian Watson, wide receiver 46 ADP. Last year, Keenan Allen was one of my must-draft wide receivers. That worked out well for me. Christian Watson was one of them as well. That did not work out for me. But I'm not yet ready to give up. I think there's a really good chance I wasn't wrong. I just got unlucky with injuries. Watson got unlucky with injuries. Or at the very least, at this price, it's worth betting on the potential that it was injuries because there's a tremendous amount of upside here. Let's not forget how electric Watson looked as a rookie. In 2022, he led all wide receivers in fantasy points per route run. By yards per route run, he had one of the best rookie seasons of any wide receiver since 2010 on a stacked list that makes this stat seem incredibly predictive. And so obviously, yeah, last year did not go according to plan, but he was never fully healthy. dealing with hamstring injuries that he thinks he's finally tackled, gotten on top of, and won't be an issue this year. Even with the injuries, he was still a full-time player and really did seem to come on over the last 2 games. But he's fully healthy now. This is an offense you're going to want exposure to, and he's so dang cheap. Wide receiver 47 by ADP, going multiple rounds behind Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Drake London. But guess what? He averages 15.4 fantasy points per game when he clears a 60% route share. That's a very low threshold. It's basically just like, here are the only games where he was healthy, and he outproduces Chris Olave. He outproduces Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and he's going so much later than all of them. Really one of my favorite high upside picks you can make in current drafts. Also perfect skill set for best ball, given that spike week potential. Next up, we have Josh Downs. Price is the wide receiver 62. Incredibly cheap. Really one of the safest picks you can make. So Downs wasn't really healthy in the second half last year. He picked up a knee injury in week 9, and then that knee injury lingered. But prior to that, so weeks 1 through 8, as a rookie, he ranked 30th in yards per game. Really not too far off of Michael Pittman. He ranked 24th in yards per route run, ahead of Pittman. He hit 2.00, which is a really important benchmark for rookie wide receivers. Basically, every single wide receiver who's ever reached or eclipsed that mark as a rookie went on to be a Pro Bowl player, multiple 1,000-yard seasons in their career. So really encouraging. Downs is going 8 rounds behind Pittman. But when they were both on the field, not even adjusting for injury, when they were both just on the field, very minimal difference in their production. Pittman outscored Downs by only 19.7 fantasy points. That's basically 1.2 per game. Again, their difference in ADP really doesn't make sense here. So definitely target the cheaper Downs, just an easy arbitrage play, which you're going to profit on. Our last must-draft wide receiver might not be one you get all that excited about, but it's one I'm super excited about. And I am loading up on him, approaching very dangerous levels of exposure. That's Demarcus Robinson. Sure, he's just the wide receiver 3 on his team, but it's a great team to be the wide receiver 3 for. The Rams have led the NFL in percentage of plays out of 11 personnel in each of the last 3 seasons. They were at 94% last year. So really just about 3 wide receivers on the field nearly 100% of the time. Sean McVay wide receivers have collectively ranked top 4 in fantasy points per game in 5 of the past 7 seasons. And so it's not just that we think this wide receiver 3 role might be valuable. It's just that Demarcus Robinson has already proved it is, and that he's a perfect fit for it. Tutu Atwell held on to that role early in the season. And then for a few weeks, they sort of split time in that role. And Robinson then fully supplanted him in week 14. And just look at the results. Double-digit fantasy points in 5 of his last 5 games. Over that span, he averaged 6.8 targets per game, 13.5 fantasy points per game, and 80% route share. For perspective, 13.5 fantasy points per game would have ranked as the wide receiver 18, and you can get this guy priced as the wide receiver 80. Clear, terrific value. Okay, well, there you have it. There's my 8 must-draft wide receivers at current best ball ADP. Check out the article in the description if you want to hear the players who just missed the cut, but who I would qualify as top values. And be on the lookout for my next article, breaking down what all the play caller changes mean for fantasy. If I had written this one a few weeks earlier, I know I'd have Chris Godwin must draft and maybe even Tyler Boyd and Darnell Mooney. So be on the lookout for that. Check out this one in the description. Also, please comment, like, subscribe, put on notifications, all that good stuff. See you in the comment section. Thanks for listening.